Welcome, everyone. My name is Melanie McGackin, and on behalf of the Rutgers Community Living Education Projects team, I'm excited to welcome you to Successful Transitions, a webinar series for students with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities, caregivers, and professionals. The Rutgers Community Living Education Project, also known as CLEP, is a program through the Rutgers School of Public Health and supported through the New Jersey Division of Developmental Disabilities. The CLEP team can serve as a bridge for self-advocates and families whose loved ones are ready to explore various community living options. CLEP is committed to taking a person-centered approach when providing community living resources to people with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities. The CLEP team's contacts will be shared at the end of today's webinar. Before we get started, let's go over how you can best participate in today's learning event. Closed caption will be activated for today's webinar. To access or hide the closed caption feature, please use the Zoom toolbar on your screen. To assure the highest sound quality possible, all attendees will be muted during today's presentation. We do, however, like to keep these sessions interactive, so to ask a question to the presenter or host, please use the Q&A option on your screen. Topic-specific questions will be addressed if time allows. And for consideration to all of our attendees, we encourage you to keep questions as general as possible. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Ms. Nkechi Okoli, the statewide Managing Director of the Office on Transition to Adult Life and Employment through the New Jersey Division of Developmental Disabilities. Today's topic, Navigating Change, the recipe for transition from educational entitlement to adult life, is the first part of a two-part series. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ms. Nkechi Okoli as she shares her insight on transitioning from a student's educational entitlement to adult services. Nkechi, welcome.
Thank you so much, Melanie. So yes, good afternoon and welcome to today's presentation. I'm so excited and eager to share this information with all of you today. I know it can be very challenging to think through, what does that transition look like? What are some things I should be thinking about? And how can I best prepare to support my young one, or even just be a liaison, or yourself go through the process of learning about that transition process, understanding what steps you may want to take, and how do I really start thinking about the future? When we say, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? It can be daunting. It can be overwhelming. And then also working with those that we are supporting in this process, it can have these extra layers of things that we want to consider and think about. So one of the key things that you're going to learn today is a conversation that's going to take place to really help you support a person going through this process to understand, what is that recipe? What are the things that I should be thinking about, and how then can I best plan for the future? Everything that we start off talking about today is really connected back to our mission as a division to really ensure that people have the information that they need in order to make informed choices. We are really key on making sure that people are going to receive quality services and supports, be able to truly participate in their community in a meaningful way, and also make sure that they not only can make choices, but informed choices. And so what you'll hear from today's presentation is a real opportunity to think through what matters to the person, and how then can we plan for that for the future. As a team, we're always working on through the Office of Transition to Adult Life, which I oversee. It gives us an opportunity to make sure that we're providing some clear and concise information to our individuals and families as they go through these processes. So what you'll find is that everyone who's in our service system must at least be generally around the 21 years of age. Now, in some cases, there may be a few people who are under the age of 21 who may access our services, but generally most people are accessing our services at the age of 21, that they have a diagnosis of a developmental disability from the age of 22 or younger, that they meet functional criteria for DDD, and that they also are a resident of New Jersey and not only obtain, but maintain Medicaid. So one of the key things that we talk about is how important that planning process is, right? We understand that there's a whole different shift of how to think about planning from when you were in the school system to transitioning into the adult service system. We're going from a system where you're entitled to the services that you're accessing through the school that are available to all who may need them, and then going into more of an eligibility system where it's based off of what you're eligible for in order to see how much you'll be able to access depending on what you're looking to utilize. You're also going to a system where you may be not only accessing services through DDD, but you may be accessing services through some of our sister state organizations as well. Some organizations like Division of Developmental Services, or even DVRS, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and so forth, right? So really going from one place to access everything that you need to now going into a broader space of accessing services from possibly multiple entities. We really talk about making sure that you understand the current knowledge and experience that that person may have. What are their desires as they move forward? And what are the different things that they're looking for? And what skills do they need to develop currently, areas that they may need to grow, and areas that they want to explore and discover? During that time of the planning, you're doing that research and understanding what services does that person need, the types of providers that are available to them, and then the resources that you can really tap into. And so we're going to start talking about how do you start that conversation, what really helps you generate those ideas, and where do you go next with the information you gather. So we always start off the conversation with really understanding what are the hopes and dreams that that person may have. What you'll find is that a lot of the hopes and dreams, when you start to continue to ask and dig deeper, really connect back to a person's desire for personal growth, possible independence, fiscal stability, a sense of belonging in their community, relationships that they want to obtain or maintain, really having a purpose and a meaning in life, right? Maintaining their health and safety in a way that they enjoy, and happiness, and really a place to live. In many of those conversations, what you'll find is that all can come back to this acronym that we call recipes. So we talk about recipes as an easy way for people to remember some of the areas that they may want to talk about as they're really planning for their future. Recipes gives an opportunity for people to really think through how to really move forward in a place that they can have successful, meaningful, and fulfilled life. What we're going to do for the rest of this conversation today is really dig deeper into these 7 main areas. So we have responsibilities, education, community life, individual health and well-being, a place to live, employment, and social life. And we're going to talk more about each one of those areas. But what we really look at this whole acronym of recipes to do is it really can help serve as a collaborative effort to discover what that person wants, help guide some conversations that they're going to be having, and really help lead the conversation about identifying that person's personal outcomes and the steps needed to achieve those. Now, we all understand that we would love to believe that the path is going to be straightforward, that we're going to put in all the right services from the beginning. And what we recognize is that sometimes there's going to be some ebbs and flows really to help us identify the exact services and supports that are going to truly be that connecting force for that individual. But what we always say is that by taking this first step of trying to plan in advance and really have this conversation, not as a one-time thing, but really talking about it over time, we always encourage starting as early as possible to have these dialogues, really can help start to narrow down the needs, start to identify where you would like to go, and start to understand the providers that are going to support that person along the way. So as we move through this conversation today, we always like to remember that we're talking about our services and supports in a way that they are supporting that person to live their best life, right? In the past, a lot of the time, sometimes services may isolate a person from their larger community. And one of the key things that we talk about and we encourage as people move forward is how then can they really stay within their community, do all the things that they love, and get the supports to maintain those spaces and those environments, right? So what you'll hear me talk a lot about today is how a person can utilize not only services and supports that are available through the division, but also access and utilize services that are their natural supports as well. How then can they utilize who is already around them to support them, in addition to also now having these great services and supports that are going to help them get to that next space and that next level. So like I mentioned, everyone does have to meet these criteria, and then we can kind of continue to support them along the way. You'll find that all the information for those who are interested in going through the application process, let's say you have not already done so, is all within this one back and front document that we've been able to provide, which can be found on our website, as well as everyone will be able to get a copy of today's presentation. So you'll be able to look at it independently as well. What's great about this document is that it gives you an opportunity to really learn about the 4 steps that it takes in order for someone to go through the eligibility process in order to go ahead and access our services. And so that really helps people understand, what do those steps look like so that I know if I'm eligible for DDD services. Those 4 steps are applying for Medicaid, completing the DDD application, completing the New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Tool, which is our assessment to help determine the budget that person will have when they come into our service system, and then completing the form to pick their support coordinator. And a support coordinator is someone who's going to help that person manage their budget and kind of navigate our service system a little bit more. We have a list of services that are available within our service system. And one of the things that we'll do as we continue today's conversation is not only talk about each one of those 7 areas, but also talk about what services and supports may be available to support that person as it relates to that area that we're discussing. So we'll start off with responsibilities. And we recognize that we really talk about responsibilities because it gives an opportunity for us to understand what that person already knows, how they already can do things such as services that can go budgeting, banking, grocery shopping, maybe even just things that they do around the house where they may do laundry or cooking and so forth. Those skills can be really useful in other environments that they may utilize as they come into the adult service system, right? So some of the skills that they may have learned around the responsibilities that they have may help them in employment, or let's say deciding to eventually live independently or live with other people, right? Really starting to understand what responsibilities that person has and or what responsibility that person may need to start to learn or be given so that we can really see how much they can do in certain areas to support themselves as they move forward. Some of the things that you may want to consider or think about in that process would be, what skills does that person need to develop? Maybe there are some transportation needs in order for them to do some of the responsibilities that we're discussing. Or who is the person who's going to help them through that process? So as we talk through this, definitely one, there's always some natural supports that person may be able to tap into, but then also services like DDD can be an asset in these spaces as well. When we talk about things in that nature, what you'll find is that these 4 services may be services that a person may want to tap into if they're looking on how to continue to, 1, maintain the responsibilities that person may have, or continue to work to improve those areas that they may now be building skills in. So community-based support can be a support in that space. Maybe they're going to a day hab where they can continue to build skills as they're in there. They may have an individualized support if they're on the community care program. And then, of course, you can also utilize parts of your budget to pay for transportation. E stands for education, and that really is talking about that personal growth, learning, and skill development. So we talk a lot about what are the skills that that person may already have, and what are the things that they may need as they continue to pursue the future aspirations and goals. The education that they may desire may help them with employment in the future. It may help them with different activities they really want to get into, and really just help them continue to fulfill their desires as an individual in that process. Some people may be deciding to go to a college program. There's several that are available across the state and externally outside of the state. We have vocational schools that some of the young adults participate in. Classes that they can also do independently. Let's say they just want to take a cooking class or something that nature. That is something that people may be thinking about doing. Or there's types of programs that they might want to get into to really advance the education that they currently have. In that case, a lot of the things that you start thinking about is who's going to fund it? How am I going to find funding for that thing? How are they going to get to those locations or programs? Do they need tutors? And who else is going to support them to maintain their daily activities by going to a program in some form? What you'll find is that, again, some of those cases, your circle of support may be really helpful in that, especially for those who are going to a college program or things in that nature. There may be financial aid that's available for your loved one. And there are some services that can be available through DDD. Some services include maybe going through pre-vocational training, right? Really starting to build the skills that a person may desire to utilize as they're going into something like employment. Maybe they're building skills in a day hab that is also available to them. One of the great things and resources that I always like to tap into is the availability of goods and services. When you're doing goods and services, it gives an opportunity for that person to pay for, let's say, a cooking class or something in that nature that they may be interested in. And or if they are going to a college, they've already gone through the financial aid process, they may then still want to pay for an additional class utilizing their goods and services if their budget allows. And that is something that is possible as well. And then again, you can utilize your budget in the area of transportation too. The C stands for community life. And a lot of what we talk about is really helping to make sure a person can maintain the community life that they have and they may desire, right? So not only maintain, but increase their interactions in the communities as they so wish. And so really helping us to identify their interests. What things does that person like to do or have interest in? Where does that individual like to go? What does that individual like to talk about, right? Really helping people find their community. What's great is that I was talking to a mom once and she was telling me how her son really loved Harry Potter. He loved Harry Potter so much that he could talk about Harry Potter from when he wakes up in the morning until he goes to sleep at night. And even sometimes he's dreaming about Harry Potter. But it gave an opportunity for, as she started to figure out what are the other places or other people who might be interested in having these conversations, she was able to find a meetup group which loved and was completely around Harry Potter. And so Meetup is an opportunity where people, anyone can go ahead, look up a particular topic and find their community that all about that particular topic or interest. And so by them finding a meetup group, her son found his people. They were able to talk about Harry Potter every Wednesday night for hours. And he really was excited to go there, really excited to meet those individuals. And now they have become lifelong friends, right? So really understanding what does that person want? What are they interested in? And how can we help them build that community that they're interested in moving forward with? Some areas that a person can start to develop that community, maybe work, maybe classes, maybe social media groups, clubs, or their place of worship. So we talk about looking into helping organizations, maybe communication is something that that person may want to continue to work on or identify how they can communicate with the community that they're interested in working with or to being a part of. Transportation needs, what does that look like? The person to provide the support, and then understanding how does the services that we have available be able to support that person as they move forward. The 4 services that come to mind would be our community-based supports or individualized supports, community inclusion services, and then transportation as well. Our next category is I, which stands for individual health and well-being. And here we actually talk about the holistic health that that a person may have, right? So talking about their medical health, their physical health, their mental or behavioral health, and then their spiritual health. So when we talk about medical health, a lot of times we may recognize that there's a need to transition even our doctors, right? So from a person who is in an adolescent or young adult now moving into full adulthood, they may need to no longer go to their pediatrician. They may need to find a new physician, right? Same thing with their dentist and so forth. And so how then do we make sure that we're planning for that in advance? Because we do know that some people may need to start meeting that new person in advance, get comfortable with them, and then know that they're now going to be going to that new person as they move forward in life, right? How do they help identify what they need in that service provider in order to pick the right provider for them? And how do we plan for that? Right? Are there fears and needles? Do they need to be sedated and so forth? What are the things that matter for your loved one to ensure that they're going to get the support they need as they're even going into utilizing new medical professionals? When we talk about physical health, we know that physical health has such a range, right? So it may be maintaining their exercise, it may be maintaining their medications, it may be how do I maintain a healthy eating habits, right? So I always talk about that. We all know that all of us, it's important for us to maintain our exercise and continue our walks and whatever that may be for each person. But we don't always love to do the same type of exercise in order to achieve that goal, right? So some people might take a dance class, some people might go to the gym, some people might just take walks around their blocks. What does that best health, physical health, look like for your son or daughter or the person you're supporting? And how then can we make sure that that's part of their routine so that they get comfortable with it and that it becomes something that they enjoy as much as possible? We talk about mental and behavioral health. And that is an area that a lot of us do need to continue to look into and make sure that we're looking at the whole person, right? So is that person already connected to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, behavioralist, have a behavior plan if they need that? And if they do, how then are we going through the process of making sure that they have that moving forward, or that the information from what they may have had in the past be now translated onto those who need to have that information as they're coming into the adult world? When we talk about spiritual health, it's really about making sure that we understand what that person's spiritual health desires are and how do we help maintain that connection to that, right? So for some, it may be going to a house of worship, maybe celebrating certain holidays, eating certain foods or not eating certain foods, certain ceremonies, or even certain types of prayer rituals. But for some, their spiritual health might literally be going out into nature and just having that time to center themselves, right? And maybe that's also a way to keep themselves calm or really get an opportunity to feel free in many senses. And so really understand, what does that spiritual health look like for that person, and how then can we truly support them in obtaining and maintaining that moving forward? So we talk about what support is needed to maintain this, and that might be for some people, certain types of therapies. Maybe they need a gym membership or something in that nature. There's transportation needs, and then again, maybe someone who would support them while they're participating in any one of these activities. The resources that we have available include our community-based supports and our individualized supports. Again, you can pay for something through goods and services. There's occupational therapy, physical therapy, and our speech, language, and hearing therapies. The P stands for places to live. And one of the great things that we have available here within the division at this time, we'll talk more about it in just a second, but is that we currently have housing vouchers. And I remember the first time that we had those available, some families were really shocked and nervous about, can my son or daughter live independently, right? And so one of the things I always say is that starting the conversation early, understanding what your son or daughter may need or desire, can help really answer that question more and more as they move up. Maybe your son or daughter may not be ready to live independently now, But maybe in a few years, with the right supports in place, they can be able to live independently or still even live with a roommate and something in that nature. And we could talk more about that in a future time frame. But when we think about places to live, it's thinking about how and who do they want to live with. A family member, do they want to live with roommates? Do they want to live alone? Where would they want to live? I'm sure that everyone who's on today's call lives in different parts of New Jersey, right? And the one thing I love about New Jersey is that you can have every type of environment that you like in one state. So if you want rural, you have rural. If you want city-like, you have city-like, and so forth. And so really understanding, what does that look like for your son or daughter? What are they most comfortable with? And how to make sure that we're keeping that in mind when identifying a location that they may live in. And the type of home, are they looking to live in a house, a single family house type of environment, an apartment, a condo? What does that look like? And then thinking about what resources that person may need, right? So maybe it needs to be an accessible neighborhood. Maybe they need to have certain additional funds available for them to maintain some of their day-to-day basic needs. Staffing needs, skills that they may be needing in order to live independently. Or again, even if they're going into a group home or something of that sort, really, how then are they going to best utilize the skills they have in that environment as well? And then responsibilities that they may have. In some cases, there might be vouchers. Like I mentioned, right now we have what's called the Supportive Housing Connection Voucher. It is a voucher that is available to those who are eligible for our DDD services and are at least utilizing one service in our service system. That voucher is a voucher that you're able to get. It's similar to like a Section 8 voucher. The individual would only be contributing 30% of their income, and the rest of the funds for their apartment would be covered by this voucher. The great thing about the voucher is that we do not take the voucher away from anybody. Once you have the voucher, you're more than welcome to continue to use it as long as you would like to. And in the case of, let's say, Section 8 voucher becomes available, if you move on to that, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So it really just gives an opportunity for individuals and families to really think through, maybe that's something you're interested in the long run. How then can we move towards there, and how then can we make that the best opportunity for your son, daughter, or your loved one? We talk a lot about in this space, really thinking about the different types of skills and responsibilities that person has, some of the things that they may need in order to support them in that environment, and then really thinking about maybe the transportation needs. And again, if the area is a walkable environment, if all their needs are maybe in a space where they are able to access it. In some cases, people may utilize some of their circle of support to support them in those environments. And then also, again, use something like our housing voucher that's available. In addition to the housing voucher, we do have community-based supports that's available. Some people may utilize day hab services, maybe during the day. They may go to a day hab and then come back home afterwards. Environmental modifications, some places of residence, they may need that. And so we do have that available for people to utilize and access as well. Individualized supports if someone is on that community care program, and then a personal emergency response system. E stands for employment, and New Jersey is an employment first state. What that means is that we believe that everyone has the right and ability to be employed competitively in the community and make sure that they are being paid at least minimum wage and or the same rate that other people who are doing the same job are receiving. And so because of that, we are very excited and really encouraging individuals and families to think about, what does that employment look like, right? Again, when we talked about the hopes and dreams and aspirations at the beginning of today's presentation, a lot of those hopes and dreams can also be fulfilled by their employment pursuits, right? So really helping them have a purpose, having them have a little bit more financial stability, really giving them something to look for on a daily basis is really exciting for a lot of individuals, as well as ourselves, right? Having a purpose really can spark so much passion in a person. And so when we think about employment, we talk about what types of jobs and careers is that individual interested in. What does the individual like to talk about? What skills does that individual have or need to build upon in order to achieve the type of goals that they're interested in, right? We talk about lists and experiences the individual has and their jobs and careers of interest. And then what are the outcomes of those experiences that they've had in the past, right? How then can that influence positively and or different ways for us to understand what has affected maybe some negative experiences in the past so that we can keep that in mind as we move forward to support them during those pursuits in the future. The other thing that I'll say is that we partner a lot with our sister agency, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, also known as DVRS, who really helps with a lot of resources and information around employment. And then we too also have a lot of employment services that are available to individuals and families. Some additional considerations that we always want to keep in mind, though, as we think about employment is the location, right? There's so many different types of environments that exist when we talk about being employed. So understanding if it's an environment that your son or daughter or loved one is comfortable in, right? Sometimes they may not like a place that's very noisy. Maybe they need someone that's a little bit more quiet, and that really helps us work with them to identify a great place for them to consider employment in. Maybe it's not a full-time job that they may be looking for. Maybe they are looking for something part-time, but we have had some people who what they're able to do may be 4 hours a week, and that's okay, right? So really understanding what is their employment pursuits at this time, and how then can we make sure we're supporting them along the way. Is there a certain shift that is best for that person? Maybe they work better in the evenings. Maybe they work better in the mornings. What does that look like for them? What is a salary, again, that that person in that same role makes, and making sure that they're also making that same thing, and so forth, right? So we really think about the whole experience when identifying a job and understanding that those things are important for a person who is supporting the individual or family to understand so that they can help them move forward in pursuing a job that's going to be best suited for that person. What will be needed to help that person succeed in that job? Maybe education, additional education, right? So again, we talked a little bit about trade schools or colleges, or even just a class that might be supportive of their desire to be employed. Maybe they would do something in that nature. Whatever might help them with the skill building and skill development, that may be really helpful in this space. Addressing any type of communication, behavioral health concerns or challenges that can be really helped to help them get into the next space that they're looking for around employment. If they're looking for transportation, that might be needed, or even some levels of supervision may be really helpful in this space for an individual as they look forward. One great program that is available in a lot of areas throughout New Jersey is called Project Search. And I don't know how many people have heard of Project Search before, but there are a few adult sites, meaning people over the age of 21 who may be participating in this program. And then there are some student sites at certain schools. And that really is an opportunity to be a transition to work program. And so what's great about this transition to work program is that the person goes through 3 rotations of different types of jobs. And a lot of the individuals who go through this process actually end up with a job with one of the agencies. And it's been really great to see people get the support they need through that process, and then understand them actually moving into a regular job after this program. So it is a 1-year program, and it's something that's really been exciting for a lot of people to participate in. But when we still talk about employment as a whole, and we look at the services that DDD has available, it may be that you're tapping into assistive technology. Maybe that person is not really sure exactly what they want to do, but they really want to think through some ideas that they may have, right? And so career planning can be something that can be really helpful with really jotting out and planning what that career may look like for that person, and how then can we now start looking at what jobs are appropriate in that space. We have community-based supports, goods and services, individualized supports, pre-vocational training, right? So again, the skills that that person may need in order to thrive in employment, supported employment, and then transportation. So when we go to the next letter, that is S, and that's social life. We talk about social life, recreation, and fun, right? There's supposed to be a joy in living and being an adult and going into the community. And so how then do we make sure we're keeping that in mind? And so really considering the current social, recreational, and fun activities that person may be already into, which activities does the individual want to continue, right? So they may already be doing something, they may really love it, and or they might say, you know, I enjoyed it for the time that it was, and I'm now interested in looking into X, Y, and Z, right? Where are these activities available? How can the individual access these activities? And then what are new activities that they would be interested in as they move forward? Key thing in this would be really having that conversation, talking about some of the activities that they may be interested in, and then really understanding what do the transportation needs look like for that? How can we support that person around that? And then understanding who needs to be a support to that person, if anybody, in that process. In our social life, we break that down into talking about a little bit about the relationships. So that person may have different categories of people they may want to stay in contact with, and also different ways that they may want to stay in contact with each of those groups, right? I always like to think about the fact that even as we've continued to grow into our adult life, we may have certain types of friends or relationships that we have for particular types of activities, right? So if you're a person who really loves to go to the movies, you may know someone that you would contact for just that. Or if you want to do a certain type of sport or activity, you may have a different group of people that you would contact for that. So really understanding who are those pockets of groups that that person may be interested in maintaining relationships with. How were they staying in contact with them now? And how then will they stay in contact with them as they move forward? And especially when we talk about that transition from the school to now being an adult, there may be a lot of people who you saw on a daily basis, right? Let's say if they were in school. And so even for ourselves, when we transitioned out of high school, in many cases, when you went on to whatever you went on to, you now had to make an effort to stay in contact with a lot of different people. So the same thing comes into this conversation. If that person's really interested in maintaining certain relationships and conversations with certain people, how then will they be able to translate that as they move on to different spaces? Are we now developing a Facebook chat that the young adults can stay connected together? Or is it going to be that they're now just calling each other on the phones and they do periodic meetups? What does that look like, and how do we make sure that they're supported around that? A lot of the information that's around how will that individual really maintain that social relationships, again, maybe hanging out and getting together, social media, like I said, a Facebook group or anything in that nature, clubs and organizations. Maybe they all go to the same church, or they're in the same local area and they may want to go to the same place of worship together, or even just gatherings. So it could be for family gatherings or even just gatherings that they create with their friends or colleagues in order to maintain that relationship as they move forward. So in this case, a lot of what we talk about is supporting the person through helping organizations, maybe communication, maybe something that they may need help with. Again, maybe they need help with utilizing the phones, utilizing social media, Facebooks, maybe even having Zoom calls with their friends, whatever that looks like for them to maintain those relationships. And then even considerations of transportation. In a lot of cases, we know that that is also a consideration. In this conversation, there may be some supports available through community inclusion services where several groups of individuals can come together and do activities together, goods and services, and then again, transportation. So that totals up recipes, right? And in that, we say, okay, Nkechi, I gathered all this information, or I'm starting to think through it, and I recognize that there's certain areas that we don't have this information yet, and other areas that we already know the answers to all that information. Awesome. But one of the key things that we talk about is how do you then chart this information in a way that other people can utilize it, especially as they move forward in planning, right? Planning for their future, whether they're still in school or even planning for their future when they start to work with their support coordinator, with the division, and so forth. Um, and so one of the key resources that we talk about is resources available through Charting the Life course. So Charting the Life course, if you go to lifecoursetools.com again, you will get a copy of today's presentation. It is a great tool that you see before you, which is called the Life Course Trajectory. And it gives an opportunity for you to map all this information out, right? So let's say you already know what the individual does not want in their life. I don't want to feel isolated. I don't want to only work in an environment where I'm not with or in the community. It really gives you the opportunity to then be able to say, well, I do want X, Y, and Z. And so what's great about this tool is that it gives an opportunity for the planning team to really understand what experiences in the past has been really helpful towards achieving these goals and what hasn't been as helpful. And then what are the things that we need to put in place in order to make this successful. And the great part is that even if you don't have the answers to moving forward, a person who's supporting you or the individual that you're supporting would be able to help maybe fill in some of those gaps. So it's a really great opportunity to learn more about what that person wants as a whole and how then can we help support them towards their vision of a good life. The second tool that I always like to share, it's called the Integrated Support Star. And the Integrated Support Star gives an opportunity for people to lay out all the resources and supports that are available to them in all 5 categories, okay? So we talk about what are the relationships they already have, what are the eligibility specific services like DDD, maybe they're already connected with DVRS, maybe they already have a housing voucher, and so they don't need another one. Maybe there's community-based supports. So maybe something that's available to all would be something that would be considered in that area. So if there's a really great barbershop that they go to, a really great pediatrician, you can put that information in that area. And then technology. What are some of the technology supports that the individual you're supporting really already has access to, is utilizing? And then lastly, their personal strength and assets. We know that each one of our young adults who are going through this process, or even adults who are going through this process, has so many great strengths and assets and things that they can really bring to the table in any of these conversations. And so this is a great opportunity to lay those things down on paper so that when you are going through the planning process, you can share this with someone and say, hey, this is the information we already have. I would really like to learn more about technology supports that we can have for my son or daughter, and or this is all the resources I have. How can this support us in planning for the different areas of their life that we're really interested in pursuing, right? So a really great tool to be used. You'll also see on lifecoursetools.com so many other resources that are available to families to utilize during that planning process. So the last thing that I'll say in regards to the recipes is that it really is an opportunity for a person to really develop a plan around the areas that really are important to them as they move forward in order to really put this plan together, especially if they're utilizing services through the Division of Developmental Disabilities. They would be working with their support coordinator. And that support coordinator is the person who helps manage their budget alongside the family. And so with that being said, taking this information that you've gathered, putting it together and having that conversation with your support coordinator can really help them give ideas as to some services you may be interested in utilizing and really giving you that informed choice to make the decision between different services that are available in order to really move forward in some of these areas that they may be interested in pursuing. There are some other great resources through the Box Center that's available. If a person is interested in figuring out how do I pick a support coordinator, maybe I got through all 4 steps already, but now I'm at the 4th step and I'm trying to figure out who to pick as a support coordination agency. They have a guide for you available to support you through that process. There's also a guide on picking a provider that's available as well. And then how to pick a supported employment agency if that is where you're at in the planning process. So we always say to plan with your recipe in mind, and making sure that as you plan, it really helps anyone who's supporting know where you want to go so that they can help you along the way. Before I open up for questions, again, I'm coming from the Office of Transition to Adult Life and Employment, and just want to share that if this was helpful and you are interested in participating in other presentations that we have available, we generally have 3 other presentations that we provide. We have our Navigating the DDD Service System that talks specifically about going through the process from beginning to then accessing support coordination and what to expect, right? We break it down into 4 steps, like we briefly discussed earlier. We have someone who's on our team who actually utilizes our services, and he is a full staff member, and we are so excited to have him. He also does a presentation that's called Preparing for a Brighter Future, a firsthand experience of a person with disabilities, and he actually provides resources and information to individuals and families about the process of gaining employment and just going through utilizing different services the state has to offer. And then the last one we talk about is employment. And like I said, we are an employment first state. And so we are eager to always share information we have around employment and help others really achieve that goal if that's something they're interested in. We are all over the state, so we attend resource fairs, information sessions, conferences all over the state. And so if you're interested in connecting with us when we're in your area, you can just go to our website that you see below and attend one of the events that are in your area. And or again, if your school does want to have a resource fair, they're more than welcome to request for us to participate, and we're happy to come. And then the last big thing that I would like to share with you today is that we are starting our Transition Thursday webinar series. Some of you may have already participated in our welcome sessions. We've actually been doing that now for 2 years. But the new thing that we'll be doing is also a intake process and transition resource webinar that we'll start to have on a monthly basis starting in September. And then also we'll have different topics that all of you tell us that you're interested in. We'll make sure that becomes on rotation on the 3rd Thursday of every month. So we're really excited to make sure we're bringing this information to our individuals and families and making sure that you're getting all that you need during this transition process. With that being said, these are just a few helpful resources that are available. Everything that we talked about today, especially if you want to go deeper into any of the services that I mentioned, you can find that in our supports program and our community care program manuals. You'll also know that there's a quick guide. So our manuals are quite lengthy, and sometimes it may take a little bit of time to go through them. However, there is a guide called the quick guide that is available. It's a lot shorter, more condensed, but it talks specifically about some of the services in a more brief synopsis. And then if you want to go a little deeper, you would go ahead and go into our supports program manual. You can also check out our website. It is now a little bit more user-friendly, and so you can find so many resources there as well. And with that being said, I thank you guys for your time. If you have questions about some of the things I added at the end, or even any of the conversation that we had today, you can always email our help desk, which is ddd.transitionhelpdesk@dhs.nj.gov. You see that before you today. And I hope that this has been helpful, giving you some things to think about, maybe some things to start having conversations about. And if nothing else, really saying you're already on the right track. And we're so excited to be a support as you're going through the transition process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nkechi. We have many questions coming in, both in the chat and in the Q&A section. So let's start with the Q&A, if that works for you. The first question I came in early in the presentation when we were just introducing the recipes was, how does this process apply for those who cannot communicate abstract concepts?
Very good question. So we definitely understand that different people communicate differently. And so I think some of the key things that we always talk about is understanding how that person communicates. And maybe if this is a transition process that you're talking about in advance, right? Transition is not something that you just do one time. It'd be something that you can start as early as you would like. Some people, they say they start having conversations about transition starting at the age of 10. Some may be doing it younger or earlier. And so as maybe you're seeing them and giving exposure to certain spaces or environments and seeing how they respond to it may help with that planning process. It may help with understanding what they may go more towards versus things that they may just not be as interested in, and helping them be the guide in the conversation.
And next question is let's see, pertaining to the planning and access of services. How can individuals make informed choices and become aware of the services available within their community if they are not being informed about the supports accessible to them?
You said if they're not being informed.
They're not being informed.
So I'm so sorry to hear that they're not being informed of the services. And so one of the things I can do for you right now is share where you would be able to find out about all the services available through DDD specifically. So for DDD, like I mentioned, you can go ahead and look into our quick guide. That is also available on our website, but then also our supports program or community care program manuals. But specifically, if you want to know specifically the support services available in your area, it would be going to our DDD provider database. Okay, I will try to put that into the chat as well. When you go to the provider database, and it is very Google friendly. So if you just put in DDD provider database, it should pop up as one of the first things that you will be able to access. Once you click on that, you put your area and the type of service you're looking for, and it'll be able to give you a full list of all the services that are available specifically to that service. I'm sorry, all the service providers that provide that service in that area. So you can look through that. And then I would say, after you look at that list, you can utilize the guide that I mentioned that is developed by the Bog Center. Again, very Google friendly. You would go ahead and type in how to pick a provider. Once you type in how to pick a provider, you will get that guide, and it'll give you some ideas and things to think about when deciding what type of provider you want to pick. The great part about everything I just shared with you is that our providers know that you're going to be asking questions. So they're eager and excited to receive the calls in regards to understanding more about what they can provide for you. So don't feel shy about doing that.
Wonderful. And if I could, just through my lived experience with finding different supports and services for my son, I think reaching out to those families in your area that you may have a connection with, right? Whether that's through a support group, maybe a school group, right? If your son is in school, a lot of times the case managers, if they've been in that district for some time, they will know a lot of different supports and resources. And also, as if this is a parent of a school-aged individual, as you're getting connected with a support coordinator can assist in identifying some supports and activities also, right? Once they're going through some of those person-centered tools with you, as they're getting to know the individual, they'll be able to share some resources with you also. Yeah. Let's see, how do you get the voucher? So, Nkechi, I know that you were speaking about the supportive housing
Yeah.
connection. I did drop a link for families and professionals to learn some more information about them. So please feel free to look at that link in the chat section. But Nkechi, do you have any experience with that? How to go about getting the voucher?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Melanie, for putting that into the chat. So I'll let you go ahead and look at some of that resources that are available there. But on a very general note, what will happen is that if a person's interested in utilizing the voucher, what you would do is let your support coordinator know that you're interested in utilizing it. Some key things to keep in mind is that it is a voucher that if you're interested in using, we're expecting that you utilize it within the next 3 months roughly. And in that process, they would be making sure that the area that the person is interested in living in meets what's called the fair market rate. That information is all available on our website, and we have several fact sheets that are available to help individuals and families learn more. But the key thing is that you don't have to do it alone. Share with your support coordinator what you're interested in, and they'll be able to guide you along the way as to what you should be looking for or thinking about in that process. So hopefully that's helpful, but it is something that's available to all people who have been determined eligible for our services. And as long as they're using one other service, they can go through that process and learn more. Even if a person doesn't just want to live by themselves, there's so many different ways that they can live with someone else as well.
Beautiful, thank you. I know on the C.L.E.P.E YouTube page, I believe you can also access it through C.L.E.P.E.S, the Community Living Education Project's website. We did have someone from the Supportive Housing Connection present on the voucher, so you can always look at that. Again, I dropped a link in the chat section so that you can reach out for additional details if that's needed also. I'm going to actually go to a question that sort of relates to the voucher also. And again, right, and Nkechi is not an expert in everything DDD related, but she may have some insight. If not, again, we're going to refer you to the Supportive Housing Connection directly. When you're looking at places to live, could that be looked at as a voucher that could be used at a college for housing on campus in a traditional residence hall or in a college program that might have specific supports for a neurodivergent person, if that is considered an ad for the university?
It's
So,
a really good question. And I think to that point, one of the key things that I would suggest is because there's so many different nuances for certain things, we would definitely have you reach out to our supportive housing team, who they do have an email, but if you email our transition help desk, I will forward you over the person, the key person who's been very helpful with answering all these questions specifically about housing. Her name is Courtney Davey, and she loves to be able to help people understand the process even more smoother. And so I can definitely get that information over to her once you email me about it, or if Melanie can share it with me, and then I will be happy to get someone to answer that question specifically for you.
okay. My son needs things like an adult size outdoor swing and a sensory room. He doesn't have behaviors. I don't think a group home is enough for him. Are there any campus type facilities?
It's a really good question. And so depending on where you are in New Jersey, the types of services that we have available in regards to what type of providers are available vary. And so what I would say is definitely have that conversation with your support coordinator, and then understand what providers are available in your area, but they may be able to help you understand what we do have available and what we don't.
Absolutely. And Nkechi, can I ask, can you forward this slide one? Is C.L.E.P.E contacts on the next slide? Do you know?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Are the C.L.E.P.E contacts on the next slide in
Oh,
your
yes, sorry.
presentation? No, not at all. Perfect. So I do want to also offer the Community Living Education Project as a resource to that question, specifically about the housing. We are a very small but mighty group. Many of us have lived experiences as family members, and there's also many of us have lived experiences professionally in other positions. So we would be more than happy to provide some information for you to further explore different options depending where you are in the process. So feel free to reach out. I'm assuming this is a professional, one of my people would require a one-to-one because of his mobility and other health conditions. But even though he would be able to do some jobs, he's not eligible for DVR because not eligible for DVR. They did have an interview this person is sharing.
Okay.
What is available for someone like him to support his interest and potential part-time work?
That is awesome. So one, I'm so excited that he is interested in working and that he is going through the process of looking to see what supports are available. The first thing that I would say is that now that he's gone through the process with DVR, he unfortunately was denied services through them for employment. It is still okay and still possible for him to pursue it. What he would do is follow up with our support coordinator, share the letter or confirmation information that says DVR is not able to provide that service, and then we then can provide our employment services for him. So I would suggest probably utilizing the career planning to help identify exactly what job he's interested in. And then with working with your support coordinator, be able to identify how we can move that forward to support him with continuing to pursue his employment needs.
Wonderful. We have someone sharing, let's see, having trouble finding information for someone with multiple disabilities who would like to start a small art business, craft shows, and Etsy type of thing they're sharing, potentially with siblings. Are there small business startup supports for someone with a disability? DVR couldn't assist and supports for the person with a disability and female partner as an underserved business owner.
It's a really good question, and I'm really excited that people are getting creative with the different opportunities and jobs that they are developing. One of the key things that I would say is that we don't necessarily have a direct service that is available specifically to support the small business. However, I do know that a lot of families and individuals come together like utilizing supports and conversations with people who are in the C.E.P.E.S, Community Living Education Project, or even their regional family support networks, and talking about how they have come up with these ideas, if they've come across anyone else who has, and really starting to talk within their networks about what resources and supports may be available to support them around those specific jobs. When it comes to supports for the person while they're doing some of those jobs, they can probably use certain supports that we have available, like our community-based supports and things in that nature. But when you're talking specifically about development of that job and understanding the nuances of it may be more of a talking with other people who've gone through that process and how they have also found resources around that.
Again, reach out to us. We definitely are aware of a few small businesses that have started up. I'm not sure what resources that or support that they've had to do that, but if you reach out, we can at least give you the name of some of those small businesses, and maybe you can reach out to them to see if there is funding or support in order to successfully do so. Let's see. Let's jump a little bit around here. I feel like we've asked some of these questions already. What are some of the things that should be included on, great question. What are some of the things that should be included on a student's IEP for the transition to adulthood section that will help guide the process? Also, are caseworkers or navigators ever provided to families to help with this process to begin planning and implementing steps towards transition before they turn 21, or do they have to wait until the age of 21?
That's a great question. And I'm really glad that you asked that. And so when we start talking about planning, in New Jersey, the IEP needs to include some transition services starting from the age of 14 at least, right? And so in that conversation, it's really about planning for what that person desires in the future. So really starting to talk about what are their employment goals, what are their future aspirations, and making sure you then ask the question of how then can the school help support your son or daughter developing the skills that they need in order to thrive after school, right? And so when we start having those conversations, that may mean building certain skills that would help them maybe live independently, maybe pursue employment, maybe pursue higher education. And some of these great schools across the state may have like a 18 to 21 program, right? They may have these different types of resources that are available so that your son or daughters can participate in it. But it's really about starting to talk and think more about what does that future look like, and how then can they help support your son or daughter build those skills now in order to achieve the goals that they're looking for in the future. When we talk about having someone participate in a meeting, when you guys are having your IEPs, if you are interested in for a limited number of IEPs, we can probably come out to one of the IEPs with you. You can go ahead and reach out to our transition help desk, and we'll be happy to try to make someone available to participate in that. But one of the great things that we do have available is that we are trying as much as we can to connect with all the schools throughout the state. And when we do that, we are available to do what we call resource calls or resource days with all of our families who are interested in learning more about what DDD has to offer, or some things that they may want to be considering while they're planning, while they're still in school. So you can feel free to email our transition help desk and or call any of our local offices and click number 2 to get to our team. And then when doing that, we'll be able to help answer any questions and see if we're available to come out to a IEP meeting.
Beautiful. Nkechi, I do want to apologize. I am just now realizing I actually really held you over time, so I am very sorry. But I do just want to share another resource, as that last question was specific about things to consider in the IEP. Nkechi shared how, right, having that your vision for the future and aligning, assessing and aligning some of those skills needed in the IEP so that goal can be reached. Our part 2 session might be actually really valuable for that individual who is asking that specific question. Part 2 is preparing students for life after graduation from a behavior analytic perspective. That's going to be on May 30th. And that session is going to complement the presentation that Nkechi just shared with us today. I'm going to drop that registration link again in the chat section, so feel free to click that link. Nkechi, I do want to apologize again for holding you over time. As we're preparing to say goodbye today, you're going to see a quick evaluation link. It's on your screen. It may also pop up as you're disconnecting this afternoon. Takes about 30 seconds. It's information that you provide us that really allows us to better serve the community moving forward in a really relevant way. So please, we encourage you to take that 30 seconds to help us out. Share some information about what you might be interested in learning more about for the future, and we'll do our best to align our presentations to better address your needs. Nkechi, as always, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It's always a pleasure hosting a session for you, and we look forward to working with you again in the future.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here, and thank you all for participating today. I hope some of your answers were, your questions were answered, and I'm so appreciative of this space. So thank you so much, R.E.C.I.P.E.S and Melanie specifically.
Thank you, everyone. Please be well and look forward to seeing you next week on part 2 for the series. Thank you.